Hi everyone, this is Jen from the future. I'm just hopping in to re-intro this video because I started filming this video just after Christmas and I'd hoped to finish it by February, but then I got sidetracked by doing the Women's Prize long list reading vlog. So I started this video in the winter and then I took a break to film that video and then came back to it. So we start in winter and then we finish in spring. But I thought I should hop on and say don't be confused when you watch the next clip and hear me talking about Christmas. I'm aware that that was quite a while ago. Anyway, come on a journey with me through many months and lots of books, and I will see you again, like me, future me will see you in a future clip. Yeah, anyway, on with the video. Bye. Hi everyone, I was going to say Happy New Year, but I'm not sure when you're seeing this video, it might be February. Anyway, Happy New Year to you. Regardless. My name is Jen, I'm an author and a book reviewer, and I thought I would start a new reading vlog today. I come to you in my very chaotic looking office. I was going to say you don't want to see what's behind the camera, but I tell you what, I'm going to show you because I'm going to hold myself accountable to clean this up. It's become a bit of a dumping ground over Christmas. So we've got some clothes that my daughter has outgrown that need to go into the attic, along with a duvet and some sheets for a blow-up bed that also need to go into the attic, the Christmas decorations which need to go back up into the attic, a book trolley that needs to be organised, this huge stack of books which are all the books that I've kept that I read last year that I'm going to be doing an epic reading wrap-up video of, which you should have already seen by the time you've seen this video, and then all the books that I have read and reviewed for the Inclusive Books for Children Awards, which also need to sit in this pile because I need to do extra things with them. So, I mean, everything's in piles and has a specific place that it needs to go, but this is not very calming, this environment, so I'm going to sort that out after I have filmed this clip. I thought I would start a reading vlog where I'm going to be reading other booktubers' favourite books. So that's a bit of a lie. That's just the title I'm going to give this for ease. 2 of them are booktubers and 2 of them are podcasters, but you can't really make a succinct title with that information. So I've done this in previous years where I've solely read other booktubers' favourite books, but there is a podcast I wanted to use this time round, which I can also recommend to you in case you haven't heard of it. So I have 6 books here that I could read in this video. I don't think I'm going to be reading all of them, but I like to have some to choose from. So let me just tell you what they are and who has been recommending them. So firstly, we've got a non-fiction book. This is 1,000 Feasts by, I know I said by Lauren, no, it's by Nigel Slater, and it's recommended by Lauren. This was her favourite book of 2024, and I requested this for Christmas because she'd been raving about it so much. In fact, I will insert a clip here where you can hear her talking about it, and I will link her channel in the description box down below.
His writing is so transformative, and he spends a lot of time in places like Korea and Japan, also Scandinavia, and there's so many excerpts from his sort of notebooks and his diaries over the years. So you're reading that, and then you might stumble upon a lovely bit about a notepad shop that he really likes, or there's a whole chapter designated to brushes that he uses to decorate his house, which were just lovely. And it's just so gentle and lovely, and I'm not somebody who wishes to travel very much. This for me is how I like to experience travel, from someone who can write beautifully and likes to eat in different places and likes lovely scenery and can describe that perfectly for me. This was it.
So this is a series of vignettes where he's talking about food memories, and I read the beginning, like the first page, and I just thought it was really lovely. Then Mercedes, lovely Mercedes over at Mercy's Bookers Musings, her favourite book of the year was The Axeman's Carnival by Chidgey, and this was on my radar anyway because I read Pet in 2024 and absolutely loved it. I didn't love the premise of this one, but neither did Mercedes when she read the blurb, because it's about a talking magpie, and to be honest, that doesn't appeal to me, but apparently it's brilliant, so I will very happily read this. I was thinking of saving it, to be honest, because, you know, I want to have other books of hers to read, but that's silly because she has backlist books I can always get to, and she's very prolific. She has a new book coming out in, I think it's in May, so we're spoiled really. I will insert a clip here so you can hear Mercedes talk about it for a minute.
When I heard about this book, I was excited initially that Chidgey had another book out because I really enjoyed Pet. And then as soon as I read the description, I was really disappointed because it's about a talking magpie. And I was like, nah, I don't want to read about talking animals. Like, it's just annoying. I'm not really into this whole like fantastical stuff anymore. I like to read realistic stuff or like epic fantasy. I don't really like the in-between. But I thought I've got to give it a go because I really loved her previous book. And boy, was I wrong. This was just complete, like, perfection. It was amazing. This was everything good I can say about a book. This was. I think Catherine Chidgey is an astounding writer. I think this shows to me, this book and Pet, and also my knowledge of what her other books are about, which I do plan to read, shows that Catherine Chidgey is a writer who can write about anything and do it brilliantly, because this is so different to Pet, but still so fantastic. You can tell it's the same writer, but with like completely different interests.
And then the other recommendations come from Alice Slater and Bethany Rutter, both of whom are authors, and they run a podcast called What Page Are You On? And I will link that podcast in the description box down below. They talked about their favourite books of the year, and I bought 4 of them. I will very briefly talk about them. 1, because I hauled them very recently, and 2, because I'm going to be chatting about the ones I read in depth anyway. So we have The Fate of Mary Rose by Caroline Blackwood. I think this is about a girl who goes missing, and they said it was a bit like Celia Dale meets Patricia Highsmith. Both of those authors I really enjoy. Then we've got All Fours by Miranda July, which is about a woman who says she's going on a work trip, but then goes to a motel and stays there for 2 weeks and doesn't tell her family. Then we have The Queen by Yasmin Zaher, which is about a Palestinian woman living in New York, and it's about identity and place. I think all of the books that they recommended are about women unravelling in various different ways. Then we've got Clean by Alia Trabucco Zeran, and this is a translated book. It's translated from the Spanish by Sophie Hughes. I think this is about a nanny who has been working for a family whose daughter died, and she's locked in a room and she's telling us about what happened. And they said it was brilliant. So I'm very keen and excited to get to as many of these as I possibly can. I am still getting over a chest infection, which is why my voice sounds like this. It is a very beautiful day outside. I haven't actually been outside in 6 days because I have been quite sick. I would like to get outside today, please. So we're going to go for a little walk. It is super, super misty. It looks like some kind of horror novel outside with the mist, but it's kind of beautiful at the same time, and I love it. So I will insert footage of that here. And I even made some bread this morning. Who am I? Who does she think she is? Made some bread and I made some soup yesterday. So we'll have some nice homemade soup and homemade bread and a walk in the mist. That just sounds great. So yeah, footage of that here, and I will come back to you and talk about books when I've read something. I hope you're all doing well. Hello, I have started reading 1,000 Feasts by Nigel Slater, and I thought I would read you this bit from page 19, which I have underlined because I thought it was lovely. Each section is a food memory from a certain place, and this one is called Green Shoots, and it's set in Finland. There is a pot of coarse oat porridge with bilberries, a whole side of smoked salmon on a wingly aged plank, and venison black pudding as crumbly as chocolate cake. Nettles are pressed into crisp bread like leaves on a frozen pond. A sleigh ride from Lapland, snow falling, and faced with the breakfast of my dreams, I spoon cakes of potato and kale onto my plate to eat with slices of beetroot-cured salmon. I drink glowing red lingonberry juice from a shot glass that feels like a transfusion and stir a compote of berries into my yogurt. I then head out for a walk to the quay and its oxide red wooden houses. Like, everything is so easy to picture. It's also making me super hungry, which is fine because today I'm making a roast dinner, which is it my favourite? It might be my favourite. It's my favourite at the moment anyway. So I'm going to eat lots of delicious food today too. My Yorkshire puddings recently have been on point, which I'm very proud of. So yeah, I'm enjoying this so far. Let's go make a roast dinner. Hi, it is so cold today. I've pulled on my biggest, ugliest cardigan, and you may be able to hear the heating in the background, well, the boiler trundling away. So if you can, please do ignore that. I have been reading and I need to check in with you because I finished a book, and that book is Clean by Alia Trabucco. It's Zeran, translated from the Spanish by Sophie Hughes. I'm going to put this down and just insert the cover here while I'm talking to you. This book, I don't think, well, I know it's not going to make my favourite books of the year, but I'm glad that I read it, and it was a favourite of Alice and Bethany's. I can't remember if both of them have read it or one of them have read it, but anyway, they recommended it on their podcast. I found it really difficult to read in places, which is a compliment to the book, as in you really feel like you're living it with the characters, and that makes it deeply uncomfortable. It is about a nanny. At first she's hired as a housekeeper and then she becomes a nanny. She's called Estella, and it's written in second person, so she is directly addressing the reader. I can give you an example of that at the beginning of the book. It makes it super readable because it pulls you in really quickly. My name is Estella. Can you hear me? I said Estella Garcia. I don't know if you're recording this or taking notes or if there's anyone even out there, but if you can hear me, if you are there, I want to propose a deal. I'm going to tell you a story, and when I get to the end, when I stop talking, you're going to let me out of here. Hello? Nothing? Well, I'll take your silence as a yes. As you can tell from that extract, you are immediately pulled into the story. And whilst I do enjoy the second person as a means of speaking to the reader in an accusatory way to pull you in as though you're the one who's committed the crime, as though you know more than the narrator does, but you don't. I think it can be really fun, but I thought that the author relied too much on that literary device as the novel progressed, as opposed to building more complex tones. It ended up feeling a little bit one note and a little bit repetitive in that respect, which was a shame. So Estella is narrating the book. We know that the child that she has been taking care of has died, and that she has been accused of killing her, and this is her trying to get her story across. She's constantly rewriting her narrative. She's an unreliable narrator, and I again enjoyed that. This is an example of a part that I really enjoyed. The girl turned 3 that day. Did I already mention that? And aged just 3, with that solemn expression on her face, she looked at each of us in turn. Watch it for yourselves. The expression on the face of the girl who all of a sudden looks 80. That girl who would never age because her face, her infant face, already contained all of her future faces. Sometimes I think that's why she died. She'd used up all her future faces. But that's a ridiculous thought. Strike that out, please. I thought that was a really lovely image. Warning in this book for child abuse, not sexual or anything like that, but pushing a child further than they should be pushed, and emotionally manipulating them. And of course, you know that the child dies in the end. All of that is very difficult to read. There's a lot of disassociation in this book. Estella doesn't know or can't really articulate what is real anymore, and in voicing her memories to you, to us, that's almost bringing her into existence, which is very meta because that's obviously what a book is. Characters live because we read them, but this is an example of that. She's in the middle of the night reaching out for a glass of water. This time my hand only met with the table. This lapse terrified me. My hand expected the glass and the glass wasn't there. Then it occurred to me that perhaps I wasn't there either. There's just this very claustrophobic feeling to the whole book, and that is reflected in the fact that you know how it's going to end. Like, you cannot escape the destiny of this story because we start at the end of the story, and that is also reflected in discussions on class as well. She feels trapped within her situation and has always felt that way, as have members of her family, and the wider story is, I guess, a metaphor for that. There was lots to admire in this book, but ultimately I felt as though I had read quite similar stories before. Maybe not the entire story before, but fragments of it in other novels that maybe did those things better. So it's not going to be one I think that I will return to or think about often, but I enjoyed the reading experience. If enjoyed is the right word. It was very tense. As I said, made me feel uncomfortable, and that is a credit to the text itself. Next, I have been reading A Thousand Feasts by Nigel Slater. Now, I have a confession to make. So 10 years ago-ish, I used to host the behind the scenes of the British Book Awards. Now, the British Book Awards still exist. They're called the Nibbies. They are British Book Industry Awards. So they're awards for booksellers, for marketing teams, for publishers, and it's at the Grosvenor Hotel in London, and it's very fancy. And I used to go along and I would interview authors on the red carpet as they were going in to the event itself. Also, I would interview publishers, like people who work in the industry, and I would then make a video of that. You may remember those if you have been around here for a really long time. I will find a clip and I will insert some of that here, either as I'm talking or I will insert it after. I don't know if it's going to have audio, I can't remember. I don't think it will have audio, so I'll just be playing it over the top here so that you can see. And on one of those awards evenings, one of the people that I spoke to was Nigel Slater, and the question I was asking everybody was, what is a message they would give to booksellers? Because most of the authors who were there because booksellers had nominated their book for a particular award, and lots of authors would say, oh, I really love the campaigns that they've run, the windows that they have made, etc, etc. And when I asked Nigel if there was a message he wanted to give to booksellers, he said to me, I would like to thank them for taking the scissors and opening up the boxes with my books in them and lovingly taking them out and putting them on the shelves. Words to that effect. I'm completely paraphrasing because it's 10 years ago. And I remember thinking, are you taking the mick? I was tired, clearly. Like, I didn't say to him, are you taking the mick? But talking about these really small gestures, and I think maybe because I'd worked as a bookseller for 10 years at that point, I thought, we don't just put books on shelves. Like, we do big campaigns, we work with authors, like all of these things. And I thought he was maybe not taking the question seriously. And that is entirely on me because that is not what he was doing. And I realised that afterwards. Like, I thanked him very much for his message and then moved on to the interview. It just perplexed me slightly, his answer. And then when I read his work later, was reading his writings, I realised that actually he just loves focusing on really small, intricate details and the love and care that people put into these really small, intricate details. And he was doing the opposite of taking the mick. He was being genuine. And I was clearly just dead inside that evening. That's what this book is, okay? That's what I'm saying. That's what this book is, A Thousand Feasts. It is paying attention to the really small things that make our days better and our meals better. And he's talking about weather, and he's talking about all of the smells of all of the individual ingredients, and it's really lovely. However, this is not a book that I am going to be reading all in one go, because it does feel as though it's one to pick up whenever you need a little dopamine hit, I guess, because it is so lovely. It feels like flash fiction, and there is not a through thread to these stories. Each memory is a page or so long, and when I read one after the other in quick succession, it doesn't particularly work for me. So this is going to be one that I yeah, go to when I need a little meal, a little literary meal that I can gobble up and feel satisfied by. So I'm enjoying the writing in this. I won't read you an extract because I know I read some at the beginning of this video, but yes, my inward and outward apologies to Nigel Slater for thinking that paying attention to the small things and thanking booksellers for unpacking books and putting them onto shelves was patronising. It's not patronising. It's not patronising. Sorry, Nigel. This is lovely. You're lovely. Okay. That's where we're at with reading, and that was my confession. Anyway, right, that's where we're at. I will check back in with you when I have read more things. Hi, just a quick check-in. I don't have a reading update for you, but I wanted to pop on because it's Sunday, and excitingly, I'm about to leave the house on my own for the first time since September. So I think that warrants an update. I'm going to go meet Sanne for a walk for a couple of hours, which will be lovely. And I thought I would maybe check out an audio book version of one of the books that is on my TBR for this video. And I listened to some of the audio, and to be honest, none of them particularly appealed to me. I would like to stick, at least for now, to the physical versions. So instead, I decided to download the audiobook of The Unfamiliar by Kirsty Logan, which is a queer motherhood memoir. Kirsty is a friend of mine, and actually it's quite serendipitous because the walk I'm doing with Sanne today, I'm meeting her at Belsize Park tube station, and then we're going to walk across the heath, and it's really frosty, and I will show you, and hopefully it'll be lovely and I won't fall over. That's the plan. But the last time I saw Kirsty, I did the exact same walk, so that feels a little bit weird. And I think I was maybe 20 weeks pregnant or something, more than that, around then, and it was more a waddle than a walk. I will be able to walk better today. How exciting. But yeah, I've been wanting to read this one for ages, but I have a few books, all by friends of mine actually, about parenthood and IVF and miscarriage, etc., that I just wasn't able to read when they were published. But in the same way, I don't think that they would have been able to read, I know they weren't able to read my book, Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit, which is, you know, covering the same things, that we were all publishing things around that time and going through stuff. And as much as I wanted to support Kirsty and other friends of mine who were bringing out books on those subjects, I was living it, and I was like, I can't. But now I feel like I can listen to this, and I'm really pleased that I can read it and support her and also enjoy, hopefully, this book. Obviously, it's going to be difficult subject matter, and Kirsty narrates the audiobook herself, so it's going to be nice walking down the road, listening to my friend chatting to me about stuff. So yes, I'm very excited about that, and I know this is not one of the books I intended to read in this video, but let's just go with the flow. Right, I need to excuse me, I need to put on my coat and leave. Let's go out into the cold. It's still -3 outside. Need to wrap up warm. You are sitting in the cupboard, so you do not have the best lighting, but just very quick important news update. I bought this today from our local shop, which is Multi Biscuit Brew by Yorkshire Tea. I've seen other companies do these where it's supposed to taste like a rich tea biscuit has dissolved in your tea. Is that something you actually want? I don't know, because I like dipping biscuits in tea, but I don't like biscuits getting in tea. Why did I buy this, given that fact? I'm not sure. Anyway, I quite like this. I don't think it tastes like if a rich tea biscuit had fallen into your tea, though. I think it tastes like if a custard cream had fallen into your tea, because it's quite vanilla-y. This is my favourite mug, by the way. It's quite vanilla-y, but I think I like it. Anyway, I don't know why you needed to know that, but I just thought I'd tell you. It is nap time right now, and I am going to make butternut squash soup. I've got myself in a bit of a rut of just making the same things over and over again, but I'm not going to berate myself because homemade soup is very healthy and good for you, and I have a lot going on, so I don't need to beat myself up for making the same things again, do I? No, I don't. I'm listening to the most recent episode of Books Unbound. I don't have a reading update, I just wanted to say hi. Soup and tea chats. Yes, I'll see you soon. Okay folks, we need to catch up because it's been a while. Firstly, most importantly, I'm drinking a cup of tea, and the tea that I'm drinking today is the caramelised biscuit tea. I think I spoke, was it in the last clip, about how I had discovered biscuit tea and I was really enjoying it and it was kind of vanilla-y. Well, I've graduated to caramelised biscuit tea, and this, I would say, tastes a little bit like sticky toffee pudding, kind of. I think it's got maybe a date taste to it. I think that's the sweetness. Anyway, I'm really enjoying it, but it's been quite a while since I spoke to you last. I started this video just after Christmas. My plan was to finish it in February. Then that didn't happen, and I got waylaid by the Women's Prize reading vlog. And one of the books that was longlisted for the Women's Prize was All Fours, which was a book I was going to read for this video anyway. So I thought I'll go do the Women's Prize video, then I'll come back. So that's what I've done. I have read all of the 16 longlisted Women's Prize books. If you've missed that video, it was an hour and a half long. I'll link it in the description. And now I'm back to finish this video here. So yeah, we're covering lots of time in this video, which I think is fine, but I have to catch you up because I have been doing reading. So I had a go at The Fate of Mary Rose by Caroline Blackwood, but decided that this would be a great read for autumn winter time. It has that Halloween type feel to it because it's quite creepy, gothic-y, so I'm gonna keep this for either later this year or a future autumn. Hopefully there will be many autumns in the future, so lots of time to read it. Then I read All Fours by Miranda July. I will insert my thoughts on this book here from the Women's Prize reading vlog. If you have already seen that reading vlog and you want to skip ahead because you've already heard me talk about All Fours, I will insert a timestamp here. But I loved All Fours. I didn't realise how controversial it was until I saw other people's reviews of it afterwards, but I personally really loved it. So this is what I thought of that. This is a book about a semi-famous artist in her mid-40s who is having a bit of a crisis, and she's hilarious because she thinks really ridiculous things very seriously, and sometimes you read those things and you think, oh yes, no, that's tapped into something in me and I understand that, and then she'll go somewhere so outrageous that you just can't follow her. So it's pulling you all over the place and you're never really sure where you are with her. You can't, I was gonna say you can't get comfortable, you are comfortable, but it's just very surprising, and that is what is so joyful about this. So at the beginning, she gets a message from a neighbour saying that he saw someone taking photos of her through her window using a long camera lens, and she sits there thinking, I've worried about this happening for a long time, by which I mean I have really hoped that this would happen for a very long time because I want some excitement in my life. This whole thing feels as though she is fantasizing being in a music video, and we've all been there when we've listened to music and just imagined that, you know, we're in a trailer for something, or, you know, we're on a set somewhere and the music is completely at one with us. That is what she is trying to achieve in her life, and this is reflected in many references to music throughout the book, the main one being that she's been wanting to meet up with a very famous artist who wants her to direct one of her music videos, and this meeting keeps on getting cancelled. The narrator does not want to live in her reality. Her reality feels very stilted to her. She wants something elevated. She wants to step outside of her boundaries, and in order to do that, she decides that when she's supposed to be going to New York and she's decided she's going to drive all the way there instead of flying, what she actually does is drive half an hour down the road, take on not even a rental, she stays in a motel, And then she decides to completely redecorate this hotel and spend loads of money on making it almost like a set for this version of her life that she wants to live, and she lives there for 2 weeks. It's about fantasies colliding with real life, and the way that I want to pitch this book to you is that it is erotic Wes Anderson. That is how I want to describe it, because there's a lot of reference to colour. Everything is very stylised, and as I said, people say ridiculous things in the most sincere way, and you want to laugh but no one else is laughing and you don't really know what to do. The tone really unsettles you. There is one scene where the main character is shouting across a field to another character that she quite fancies, and he is shouting back to her in this really deadpan way. So they're having this ridiculous conversation out in the open, really far away from each other, and I could just see that on a cinema screen in a Wes Anderson film. So that is what most of the book feels like, and then there's a section in the middle that feels like the book Chrysalis by Anna Metcalfe, which is quite, I suppose, more a niche reference than Wes Anderson, which I think does bring a lot of imagery to mind. But many of you may have read this book because I talked about it a lot a while ago, and because, you know, other people have talked about it too, not just me. But that is a book about a woman reinventing herself, and you don't get to see her from her own perspective, you just get to see it from others around her. And yes, part of this book feels like that, a reinvention of the self. There's a really moving section in this book where the main character reaches out to other women and non-binary people their age and asks them what is the best thing about menopause. And they're so surprised by this question, and then all of these stories and anecdotes start rolling in, and it's clear that they've never been asked this before. They don't get to talk about their desires, and they feel quite ignored and unlabeled, and not always in a liberating kind of way. I just found that section really, really lovely. It made me quite tearful. So yes, sexual freedom of perimenopause, talking about desires and queer bodies and fantasies and the impossibilities of fantasies, the dangers of fantasies, as well as the freedom that they offer. I was just constantly perplexed and bemused in the most delighted way by this tale, and yeah, it's definitely going to make my personal shortlist from this year's prize longlist. After reading all of the Women's Prize longlisted books, I then read The Coin by Yasmin Zaher, and on reflection I found this book quite forgettable. It's about a wealthy Palestinian woman who's living in New York. She has a meticulous hygiene routine. It's very Atessa Moshfegh, very My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and throughout the book she then loses that hygiene routine and everything becomes very grimy and dirty, thinking, you know, Eileen by Atessa Moshfegh. And she is fed up of the nonsensical bureaucracy that surrounds her all the time, that surrounds all of us, and she doesn't want to conform anymore. She is sick of trying to prove to white Americans that she isn't dirty because she is Palestinian, and that extended metaphor of cleanliness stretches throughout the whole book. And I thought maybe it was very bold, but I wondered if it became just a little bit too obvious, and then plants and dirt are growing in her house. It felt a little bit like The Vegetarian by Hong Kong. She's also a very outrageous person, and I just read The Persians by Sanne, which was longlisted and is now shortlisted for the Women's Prize, and she felt like a young version of Shireen from The Persians. So maybe I had just read a few too many books that did similar things to what's going on in here. So nothing was particularly shocking to me, especially because the theme of bureaucracy was so heavy in this year's Women's Prize that I again felt as though I had spent a lot of time looking at that topic. She feels as though she's got a coin that's lodged at the back of her head, the top of her spine, which she swallowed when she was younger. And again, this is a representation of the price that you pay for being Palestinian. I remember when I was listening to the What Page Are You On pod episode where Alice and Bethany were recommending their favourite books. And Alice did say that pretty much all of her favourites from last year were about women who unravel. So this, All Fours, Clean. So maybe if I had spaced the books out more, though I guess I have spaced them out because it's been many months since I checked in with you, I would have enjoyed this more, maybe. I just feel like I've read a few too many narratives like this, like Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, like Chrysalis by Anna Metcalfe, and many other women on the edge type books that have been knocking around recently. And I love this genre, but maybe I did the book a disservice by reading it so close to others. Maybe that is my fault. after reading The Coin, I then decided to pick up the Axeman's Carnival book. That was the last one on the TBR for this video. And I was going to say drum roll, but actually let's have a deflated balloon sound somewhere. I have decided to DNF this book. And I am shocked by that because I love pets so much, and I'm also really excited by the premise of her next book, which is coming out in May. This was Mercedes' favourite book of last year, and our tastes don't always align when it comes to books. We're always really aligned when it comes to film, but not with books so much. And I think this is just one of those times where our tastes do not match, and that's absolutely fine. But I am surprised just because I have read Catherine Chidgey's work before and really enjoyed it. So whereas Mercedes said that the premise did not intrigue her because this is a book narrated, if we can remember way back to the beginning of this video, a book narrated by a bird, but she said that when she started reading it, she became completely immersed in it. She didn't mind it was narrated by a bird. I could never get behind that idea. Like, I started reading it and it was just very, it created a lot of distance for me. And this is a book that is about domestic violence, and I cannot help but compare this book with Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell, which was my favourite book from this year's Women's Prize longlist. That is also a book that is about domestic violence and also has a lot of bird imagery in it. That book, I would say, is more in your face and more fast-paced, perhaps a little bit less literary, whatever that means, but I guess that's how I feel about it. Whereas this one is narrated by a bird, feels more literary, and therefore doesn't feel as immediate, doesn't feel as in your face, which doesn't mean it's not powerful and it isn't visceral and all of that. I think it is, but I wasn't as emotionally invested and attached and felt as though it was happening in the moment as I felt with Nesting. And I think that the literary devices used in this book don't necessarily, for me personally, reflect the tone of the plot. I should say what this book is about. It's about a woman called Marnie who rescues a magpie chick, calls them Tama, and they live in the house. Tama narrates this book, talking about the violence that they witness being orchestrated by Marnie's husband. And there's a lot of feather imagery in this, about having a feather-like touch, about movements being like pecks, about how Marnie's husband sharpens the blade of his axe and he's getting rid of all the feathers on the blade which make the blade not be true and strong. And I just found all of that a little bit too on the nose. And I absolutely see how in Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell, which has a trapped bird that is let free at some point, is even more on the nose when it comes to bird imagery and being trapped in an abusive relationship. Maybe because I read Nesting first, that's the one that I loved the most, and then that's why this didn't work for me. And I know for Mercedes, Nesting she really enjoyed, but she didn't love, but she loved the Axeman's Carnival and she read this one first. So I wonder if it's one of those situations, you know, like when you see an adaptation of something and the one that you see first tends to be the one that you emotionally pair with. Perhaps that's something, I don't know, but I just found myself not wanting to pick this book up. It wasn't moving forward for me in the way that I would like. I didn't feel as though I was sinking into it. I just wasn't itching to grab the book, and I thought, well, maybe next time I read it, that's when I'll really connect with it. And it just wasn't happening, and I remembered I don't have to finish reading it. I just had that epiphany thinking, if I'm not enjoying it, I have so many other books I would like to read, and it's okay if I'm not liking it. Lots of other people do. It doesn't need me to love it too. So I'm going to set it free and myself free, and I'm going to stop reading it. But I didn't want to end this video on a bit of a downer, because I would say it hasn't been hugely successful, this experiment. I have read books that I've enjoyed, but I haven't read anything that I've absolutely adored. And as I said, Mercedes and I, sometimes we align when it comes to book tastes and sometimes we don't. And I recently reread English Animals by Laura Kay, which I absolutely love, and Mercedes also absolutely loves. And I thought, okay, I'm going to read another of Mercedes' favourites because I would like to hopefully find something that I can shout about and say, yes, you should go read it, etc, etc. So I've decided to pick another of her favourite books, and I'm going to read Margo's Having Money Problems. Is that the title of the book? Let me double check because I don't have a hard copy. I'm listening to it on audio. Yes, Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. So that's the book that I have just started listening to. I'm going to read and then I'm going to come back to you, and hopefully I'll really like this one. I'll tell you what it's about in the next clip once I've finished listening to it. But yeah, spring has really sprung. I've had a lovely time these past few weeks. I've taken my daughter to the city farm. We have gone to Hampstead Heath a lot. We've gone to the pergola. We've gone to lots of places. We've been pottering around in the sunshine and it has been a joy. So hopefully this book will also be a joy. I will report back soon. Yes, see you in a minute. For you, for me, it will be several days. At the moment in our garden, we get this little patch of sun for about 2 hours every day. We get more sun as we get into summer, but at the moment that's what we get. So I make it my mission to have the washing done and hung out before that little slither of sun appears. And if I manage that, I feel like I have won at the day. Little wins. Look at them, they're so fast. Whoa! Hello, it's a couple of days later and I finished Margo's Got Money Troubles. I love this book. I'm so pleased that I loved it. I feel like I just inhaled it. The characters were so real to me. I mean, you can tell by the big smile that's on my face, but it was an absolute joy to read, as I hoped it would be, because the premise had really intrigued me when I'd heard Mercedes talking about it. And yes, our tastes align this time, which is very exciting. So this is a novel about a character called Margo who is enrolled in a creative writing course at college, and she ends up sleeping with her professor and getting pregnant. He tells her that he wants her to get an abortion. She says that after a lot of consideration, she doesn't want to do that. So she decides to keep the baby, and she ends up moving in with her dad, who is an ex-pro wrestler, and they bring up this baby together, and she navigates her money troubles in the title by starting an OnlyFans account. So it's a very, I was going to say it's a very plot-driven book. It's actually a very character-driven book, but the plot moves along quite, not speedily, but it has quite a bit of momentum to it, is what I'm saying. It is not a really slow literary book. It is really just a bit of a ride. It's also one of these books that I think is deceptively easy to read, as in you're having a great time, but then if you sit and think about it, there are actually quite a few clever things going on, especially with regard to narrative structure. So as I said, Margo starts the book being enrolled in this creative writing course, and she actually starts the whole novel saying starting a novel is a real pain because you're getting introduced to characters who you don't know and it takes you a while to settle. So it's very meta at the beginning. She is breaking the fourth wall and talking to you. And she says that some of the parts in the book she's written in third person because she wants to create more distance, and some she's written in first person because she finds that that is something that she is comfortable with and she wants to get closer to you as the reader. And I thought at first that might be a bit gimmicky, and it also might be quite distracting, the switching between third and first person, but I actually found that unless I was really paying attention to that, I didn't notice the change in perspective at all, which I suppose is interesting. She talks a lot about the purpose of fiction. So in creating this book for us, in creating a scenario with her lecturer where she had convinced herself that he loved her and he didn't, so that's a fantasy that she created for herself. When she starts her OnlyFans account, she's creating a whole new persona for herself, and she makes up stories for individual subscribers when they ask her questions. Her father, as I said, is an ex-pro wrestler, so his whole job was about creating a persona and whether or not what he did was real. Obviously wrestling is real, people do get hurt, but it's also choreographed. So I just thought there's actually so much of interest to really ponder on once you have enjoyed the meat of the story itself. And towards the end of the book, one of the final things she says, which isn't a spoiler, is that the whole point, and I'm paraphrasing, the whole point of a novel is to make you fall in love with people that you've never met before. And I realised when she said that I absolutely had fallen in love with these characters. And I was thrilled to see that there's going to be an adaptation of this starring Elle Fanning, who is also the person who narrates the audiobook. I think Nicole Kidman is playing her mum. Her mum is so abhorrent. And you know when you really hate a character, you know that a book has done something really well because you have got all fired up inside. I really hated her mother so much. But yeah, these characters felt fully realised to me, and I loved the playful meta discussion about creating fiction and what is and what isn't real. And it really kept me on my toes because at various points she was saying how, you know, in novels and in fiction, you never know what is real. And obviously you know that she's not real as a person. She is a fake character who's pretending to be real and talking to you. But I thought that maybe, like, it would turn out that this whole book was a farce, and maybe she had never had the baby in the first place and she was just imagining what her life would have been like if she had. And I don't know, it made me feel quite nervous. So yes, I think this book is a triumph, and I would very much recommend it if you are looking for some characters to fall in love with and for you to feel, as I said, quite angry on certain characters' behalf at various points. Yeah, I had a great time. It's definitely my favourite read from this video. So should we look back on what we've read? Or what I have read, and maybe what you would like to read too. I forgot to come back to this actually, which is The Unfamiliar by Kirsty Logan. I know I mentioned that earlier, and I have since wrapped it up in another video since filming the clip where I said I was going to read it. But in case you missed that wrap up, I absolutely love this, and this will definitely be making my favourite books of the year video. So even though this was not another Booktuber's favourite book of the year, it is going to be this Booktuber's one of my favourite books of the year. So I'm going to say that it kind of counts. Yeah, the audiobook is only 4 hours long, so if you're looking for a little read, recommend that. So to remind ourselves, I decided to DNF the Axeman's Carnival by Chidgey. No one is as shocked as I am, trust me. The Caroline Blackwood I'm going to keep until later on in the year or a future autumn because it felt quite gothic-y. I've decided to pick up 1,000 Feasts as and when I need, as I said, a literary meal because it's very... I was going to say piecemeal. Anyway, we'll stop it with the wordplay. It's very fragmented, and it doesn't feel like a book you should be reading all in one go because all the pieces then started to blend together. And yeah, no, to be enjoyed when the occasion arises. I liked The Coin, and I also liked Clean, but I don't think these are books I'm going to keep. I think I'm going to pass them on to other people. And yeah, they're not books that are going to be favourites of mine, sadly. And then I absolutely loved All Fours by Miranda July, but because I read this in the Women's Prize reading vlog, I almost feel like it's not a book from this video, even though the reason I bought it in the first place was because of Alice and Bethany. So really they deserve the credit because I bought it before it was on the Women's Prize long list. But anyway, loved this one very much. So those are the books that I have been reading over the past, what, four months alongside the Women's Prize books. I will do a book haul and wrap up of other things I've been reading at some point soon. I also have some other reading vlogs planned, and my latest book, which is a book I have written a piece of and edited as a whole, is Owning It, Our Disabled Childhoods in Our Own Words. It's a middle grade essay collection about what it's like growing up disabled, written by me and James and Lucy Catchpole and a host of other people, and I love it, and I've put my heart and soul into it, as have all of the other contributors. This is out this week coming if you're watching this video when it goes live. It's out on the 24th of April. I think the audiobook is even out on Tuesday the 22nd of April. I would love for you to purchase it if you would like to support what we have been doing. I guess I'm very fond of this book. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. If you would like to support what I do and throw $1 or £1 in the tip jar over on Patreon, that'd be very kind. Link to that is in the description box down below. There are a few other things over on Patreon, like a book club, behind the scenes chat, things like that. And let me know in a comment down below what you have been reading, please, if you've read any of these or if you would like to. And I will speak to you very soon. I'm sending lots of love. Bye.